Hey everybody, I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Chris Yee.
I'm Wendy Yee.
I'm Mike DeLisio.
Today we're taking a look at a game that most people hadn't heard of before Essen, because it's from a smaller company. It's getting a little bit of buzz after Essen, but it's a pretty big Euro-style game called Federation. It's from Explore 8, which I just threw the box on the floor.
Threw it on the ground like a grown-up.
In this game, which is definitely not a riff on the Senate from Star Wars.
Not at all.
You are actually using political means to move up a bunch of tracks. There's not a lot of, there's a little bit of theme in the game, like mining asteroids and stuff, but not a lot. This is a colorful game you're about to see. You can see even on the table here, a colorful board, a lot of colorful pieces. But there's a lot going on. Here's a simplified explanation. Realize I'm not going to go over every rule of this game. I just want to give you an idea of how it plays. There is a big giant board that is two-sided, and that matters a bit because the way that this section of the board here, the Senate, is going to be different, and also these machines can be different, although even those can be further changed by adding different machine tiles that you can put on the board to cover some of them up. So you really do have a lot of variety in how you set up the board. Each player has their own board in front of them. You have ambassadors on your board, which you have 2 1s, a 2, and a 3, and they also have a reverse side to each of them. You have a spot to keep gems, a spot to keep gold, a spot to keep spaceships. You also have the possibility of getting an advisor die, which isn't really a dice. It just can go up to 6 of value. Over here, you have a track, and this track is important because as the game goes by, you're going to have the ability to put little check marks on these various actions. And you can take these actions if your marker on this track, the higher this marker goes, you can then put spaceships on these actions to take them. You're only going to get 4 actions for each round, but you can get up to 9 other actions if you use all your spaceships. On a player's turn, they're going to place one of their ambassadors, a worker, on a space where no one else has gone. So if I place here, maybe later the purple player will place there. Now, when you place these, there are 2 things that you're thinking of. First of all, you're thinking of the action you take on that spot. There are 5 different colored planets, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can even pay a pink crystal to take any of those actions. So there are 6 spaces that let you take those actions on each side of the board. Some of these spaces are covered up in a 2 or 3 player game, so they're not all going to be there. So that's one thing you're thinking about. You take these actions. Other actions let you get more spaceships, move you up on the track, let you go first next turn, let you move up 2 on the track, give you a spaceship and a check mark on a planet. So that's one thing you're thinking of, is what action do I want to take? But you're also thinking of what side you're going to play. So at the bottom here, there's going to be 2 different kind of elections going off. These are going to give you points based on how high you are on the orange track, how high you are on the yellow track. As you place these here, if you place them on the number side, at the end of a round, whoever has the highest number in each row is going to get points equal to how high you are on this track that you have on your board. Your accreditation track, by the way. So that's going to matter. Also, the side that has the highest number at the end of a round is going to give bonus points to however high people are on those tracks. On the other hand, you might want to place it on the other side. This doesn't give you any votes, but it does a couple things. First of all, there's a marker here that's going to be moving every time you put this here at the end of a round. And at the end of the game, if this project is finished, it's going to give a lot of points to whoever's highest on those particular tracks. Also, this ambassador here gives you a pink gem when you place it on this side. So you have to kind of really decide which side you want to place things on and where you want to place them. So we're going to take a look at a few of the tracks. Now there's 2 things to note about each of the tracks. So there are 5 of these planet tracks on the board, and each of these tracks is going to do different things. But there's a medals on each track. And on your player board, anytime you get a medal, you'll place it here, and at the end of the game, you get the highest or the lowest value that you can see. So if you get a medal from every spot, you're going to get 30. One place to get a medal is when your accreditation gets up to here. That's 1 medal. And if you use this special action, that gives you a medal. That's 2 of the medals, but the other 5 come from each of the tracks. And so as you move on this track, you're going to be moving a figure down this track. As you move down there, the first person to get to 3 gets this medal. then someone else can get the medal. If they get to 4, then 5, then 6. So the longer you wait, the harder it is to get the medal. This track here, the mining track, you're moving down to get resources. Take 2 pink. Take a pink and a green. Here you can go up to here and take a pink and green, moving you faster on the track. But you can also go to one of these asteroids and take more medals. It's just going to go slower down the track. So this track is all about getting resources. In the yellow track, to get the yellow medals, you're going to, there's no track to move on per se. What you're doing is you take a disc and you put it somewhere and you can make a trade. Here I can trade nothing for a pink or get a check mark, a pink and a green for a blue or move up on a accreditation track, a pink and a green to get that die. And remember that die? You can put that die on top of your ambassador to add to the number of that ambassador. So if I have a 1, I can put on top of a 3 to be a 4. But once I get this helper die up to a 6, that can be pretty powerful. Change a blue for a gold and change a gold for 3 points. Here's the thing. The second time you go to use this action, you can put out another disc and take another action, or you can move a disc you have on the board up and you get to trade a pink not for a green, but a pink for 3 greens, or a gold for 9 points. And then every disc you have in this row gives you 1 point. Every disc in this row gives you 2 points for getting these medals at the bottom. Up on the green track, you can pay resources to get a machine. You have these little robots that you'll put on the machine. A machine will run automatically. So as soon as I go here, I get a pink, but also in between every round it runs. So this one, for example, gives me a pink every round. This one lets me move up on different tracks. This can increase the value of my die. Players also can go over here and you'll just get these. Don't give you something every round, but when you go there, depending on how fast you go there, the first person there, there's 2 tracks, whichever one I'm lower on, times 3, that's how many points I get. So the faster you do them, you can get more points, but also you might not be farther on the tracks. On the blue track, there's going to be a bunch of these discs placed at the beginning of the game of different values. And when you move, you'll have another person that you're moving on the blue track. You take these discs. These discs can be placed on top of one of your ambassadors as you put them out, and they will take the place of whatever it is. So I can put this on an ambassador and it's going to give me a pink and a green. By the way, I didn't mention when you place an ambassador on this side, it's going to run the project up. It might give you resources, but it also gives you a check mark on your board to take those bonus actions. And then finally, down in this section, and I just have these kind of thrown on here because I didn't want to do a complete setup, but you're going to have different people that you can get. And you have to take from the bottom first and the second. And these just give you either sometimes one-time special abilities, like this one here for instantly gives you the die. And there's ways to unclick them, or sometimes they give you permanent special abilities, but this one here, for example, just gives you 3 points for each top spot you're in the trading area. This one here says whenever I take this action in the future, I get to move an extra space when moving on the orange one. And they are colored, so they often match. Like this is a green one, so it probably has something to do with the machine actions. And so you'll be placing these next to your board over here, and you can, the more of them to take, the farther up you can get to take the green medals. Or the pink medals, sorry, this is the pink area. So there you go. That's kind of a basic thing, and I realize, folks, that I have not told you much about the game. Again, having these bonus actions is pretty awesome because I can take another blue planet action. I can increase the accreditation action too, but I need to do that. I need to place one of these on a spot that gives me a check mark. Wherever I place it, that's the action that I get, that I can take an extra one of, but I also have to buy the spaceships to do those. So you can get extra actions, but you have to work towards them. You can even get a super bonus cool action at the end of the game if you move up the track far enough. You'll draw from a bunch of super actions, like one gives you a one-time use worker, and you know, there's all sorts of really cool things that they give you. Let me show you. Like you can get this one-time extra worker here who is a 7 value and gives you a blue. So that's kind of neat. There's lots of things. I should point out that the game comes with these clear containers to hold everything. You have the different gems and things. Gold is worth a point at the end of the game if you don't use them for other stuff. And these work pretty well. They're not like amazing. You also have sort of a reference card, which is not particularly easy to understand. This tells you what to do in between rounds. But once you play a few times, everything does kind of come together and make sense. So funnily enough, for me, when I played this, it's almost, there's a bit of dissidence, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but I'm not used to Euro games being this colorful, especially this heavy. I mean,
This is, right. It doesn't look like what it is, I guess.
It does not, and I will tell you that for me at least, the initial impression I had at the table, right, the sitting down, is it was right on the edge of being overwhelming.
it looks overwhelming.
Looking overwhelming, yeah. Visually, there's a lot going on. I had a little bit of trouble at the beginning distinguishing what was where. Okay, this is a completely different area. So there's just a lot to take in on your first kind of sitting down at the table.
And the orange is next to the yellow.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
Even the action spots sometimes are like, wait, you're moving up on that track?
Right.
Got it. That's orange now. Yeah, there's
it's
little
not
things like
yellow.
that. But it becomes more understandable, and it's funny seeing it set up here again. I'm like, yeah, I understand all of this now.
yeah.
But yeah, that first initial kind of shock of like, this is, what clown game are you making us play, Tom?
Well, for me, there's a lot of feelings to the what we call the T series from Board and Dice, because there's a lot of moving up on tracks.
There is.
And all the tracks affect the other tracks. The biggest thing in this game that's, I guess, different is that Senate in the middle. So what the Senate lets you do is you're placing out a worker, and there's a bit of, it's called voting, but it's area control for the rows, and also area control for the sides, who, to get points. But also the fact that you can flip your disc, and you can put those little upgrade, whatever those things are called, on top of your ambassadors, makes it really interesting. I find that to be kind of a fascinating part of the game, because you have the 18 actions to pick from.
Right.
Yes.
Which is not as overwhelming as it sounds, because you're sitting there going, I want to move on the blue track. Is that one available? I'll take it. Well, which of the two do I want to take?
Right.
And then, but then which side of the person do I want to use? I thought it would lead to a lot more analysis paralysis than it did, because I think as you're playing the game, you kind of know what you're going to do, and what the person in front of you chooses. Yes, you may take a spot I wanted to go to,
Right.
but I might be able to use another spot to get there, or I might say, well, I'll just move up on a different track.
Yeah, I think that kind of system, this Senate system here, adds another layer of interactivity that you don't always get in a Euro with a worker placement as your central mechanism, which is this one. Usually the main interaction is going to be, oh, you took a spot I wanted. This has that, and it has more. It also has the, you're vying over these tokens. You're vying over control of the rows.
Affecting the columns.
Affecting the exactly.
It's like
Affecting the
three
tracks
dimensions,
potentially along the top there, and some of those, if you don't boost them to the end of the track, they're not going to even score. So there's just a lot more interactivity. You are paying attention on other players' turns even more than I think you would in a traditional Euro game.
You're also trying to race on those tracks
Absolutely.
to be able to get those early bonuses. And I think that it adds an interesting level of decision making and strategy behind it, because you want to be going on the same tracks as someone else because you want to help moving up that end game scoring. But also, if they move up on it and they get that bonus before you do, they might just leave it in the dust and do something else and then not help you on that scoring thing. And so there's an interesting level of, like, you have to be okay pivoting as other people pivot. And there's a lot of reading each other, which surprised me, because I don't expect that in a lot of these kind of Euros.
I was going to say, you mentioned the theme aspect of it, and while to some degree the theme is like move up on blue moons and go mining and stuff, the political theme really works for me, actually. The whole idea of the left and the right side have two different measures, or two different things on the ballot, and whichever one has the more votes, that causes a lot of the interaction. One game, I just shot up the blue track all by myself, and every time a blue referendum came up, nobody voted on the blue side, strangely.
Shocking, yeah.
Oh, shocking.
We don't want
You got to
20
play
more points.
Right. You got to play knowing that you kind of have to follow what other people are doing, but you also have to push your own agenda a little bit. It's oddly thematic in the sense that it helps teach the mechanisms of the game, and the fact that these are called projects, everyone can contribute to them. All those little things work, actually.
Yeah, something I think that's also important for me, and you mentioned it, and Wendy, you touched on it too, is the idea that if someone takes a spot that you want, there are other ways baked within the design of the game to still achieve a goal. You may have to do something slightly different. You may have to utilize a tile that you had gotten earlier. You may have to, but there are ways to get
or
something
the bonus
done.
actions.
Or the bonus actions. Yeah, you don't really feel like there's wasted turns, and that's also, I think, an important for me.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on that.
true.
Yeah.
I like the fact that every track is fun.
Right.
This is not a game. I wouldn't say that it's tight. A lot of these games are often really tight. Like, I don't have enough stuff.
Right.
This game is not too bad. In fact, I didn't mention it in the overview, but at the end of your round, depending on how you're on that accreditation track, you may have to pay a resource. I'm like, oh, feed your people. But also, you just get that resource and save it. If you can't get that resource to do it, you've chosen to not do that for another reason.
Because you know you have to do it. You have plenty of time to make that happen if you want to.
Right. But I'm saying, you go to the mining track, you get stuff.
Right.
You go to the trading track, you're making a trade that's like beneficial. I'm trading this for 3 of these.
Right.
Yes.
All this people, I get cool people. The blue track, I get these. I get to upgrade my
Special
ambassadors.
look. Yeah.
And the green track, I get a machine. So in between turns, I'm like, ha ha ha, give me more stuff.
Right.
I like all of them. And each game, I'm like, I'll try this one this turn and see
Right.
how it does. Of course, then again, that might pivot based on the voting and all
Sure.
that.
Yeah.
That's interesting because I feel like the tracks fell a little flat for me. I wanted to feel a little bit more engine building and growth in this game, and I felt like it wasn't there. Like, sure, I go to the pink thing, I get this cool ability, I use it once it's gone. The only engine building you really feel is in that green track, and maybe a little bit in the yellow. As you move up, you get
Right.
more for your trade-in.
But even that's kind of what, once you've done the 1 to 3 trade,
It's done,
you can't
right?
do it again.
And so I
Yeah, but you can do another one. I mean, I guess that doesn't.
But I felt like everything was tighter than than maybe you felt. That I felt like it was hard to get those resources because only a couple of the tracks provide resources, and then you're using those to trade in for just a different resource. And so I felt like it was surprisingly tighter than I expected it to be. And because there wasn't that build, there was never a point where I got in the game where I felt like, cool, I can do more now that we're at the end of the game. I just felt like I'm doing the same thing. Where is the big growth that I expected?
I don't think this is an engine builder.
Yeah, it doesn't
I'm not
feel like
calling
an
it
engine
that.
It's not. But I think for me, I want a little bit more of that. Like, I didn't feel like there was as much of that arc.
But I'd argue there is, because if you're moving on the blue track, those discs get incredibly better to put on your people. If you have 3 of these machines in the green, it's better. When you get to the end of the asteroid, you're getting better resources and you make bigger trades. And if you get the level 3s, you get a lot of points. And also, if you move up in the accreditation track, your bonus actions get incredibly better, especially that final bonus action, which is insanely good.
Yeah, I agree though that it feels a little bit like everything is kind of one-time use. Yeah, I love these blue special upgrades you can put on your worker, but once you spend it, it's gone, and you think, no, my thing that I got, like it's.
I guess, but there's only
Yeah.
5 turns in the game, so.
Right.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't mind a growth curve to it. This has what you describe as kind of an interesting growth curve, but it's not the one that I was kind of expecting it to be.
Got it.
Yeah.
And that's okay. It just that was the one thing that I think was a little bit it was a little disappointing. Like, oh, I really want to be able to use these cool abilities multiple times. These bonus actions on my player board. Everything about it kind of feels one-time use. And it means you have to play more strategically. You don't just get to keep doing this bonus action because it's useful. You just have to be very mindful of that. But it doesn't give that awesome dopamine rush that I get from engine building.
I assume that we've all at this table played games, multiple games that have multiple tracks going up, right? That you're trying to work on. And this is one of those. I have a sense, and I don't think this is unique to this game, that you can't, you have to pick at least one that you're focusing on. Do you agree with that? Like, I think if you try to dabble in all of them and you try to just like spread yourself evenly, you're not going to do very well. I think you have to try to specialize in at least one. What do
I
you
think
think?
you won't get the bonuses,
Right.
which are huge. Like, those are big points. I think that you won't ever really score any of that extra trackness. So yeah, I think you have to pick a couple, but I don't think you can pick just one either.
Yeah.
Because they're so interconnected.
Right.
And I think that's the other part about it that was. I know that you don't have to do everything a little bit, but I felt like the tracks were so interconnected because of the way that the worker placement board is set out that you also can't just focus in on one. And that surprised me that even I had from the beginning of the game decided I'm going to focus on these couple, and then I still had to really expand out just
I
to
think
be
you can
able to move up on
ignore
stuff.
one, no.
I do,
I
yeah.
think you can ignore
Every game of one I picked one, I'm like, I'm not doing
Yeah.
that one much at all, except maybe enough to get the medal.
Right.
Of course,
Yeah.
if I don't get that medal, I can get it another way because there's a spot there to just take a medal that you did not deserve.
That's correct.
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh, I gotta say, didn't deserve. I like that. Okay.
No, I think that's funny. I'm always like,
Yeah.
I have a medal.
That's right. Yeah.
You know, one thing that surprised me was that the little ship tokens and the bonus little check marks, there weren't enough of them to do the entire board. And that really surprised me because I ran out.
Yeah, that's
And
deliberate.
so, well, it's deliberate, but it was one of those things that surprised me. That
I don't want a
you
game that
run
you can
out.
do everything. I really don't. I think 9 bonus actions to your 20 is pretty impressive anyway. You
Yeah.
may be the first person I've seen that gets all 9 out. But I mean, before we go to final thoughts, real quick, what did you all think about the components? Because I mentioned the splash of color because I really love it. I love how everything looks. I like all the little pieces. I like the inlaid boards. I wish the big board was inlaid, but I understand why it's not because there's 2 sides to it. Setup is a bit of a bear, especially setting up the one I didn't show you because it's just a bear to set that up.
Yeah.
And for your first couple games, you will look up the special abilities on those guys.
100%.
Wow. The rest of the board, I don't think it's that complicated at all. But the special little abilities, you'll look that up a few times. But what did you all think about the components?
I think they're good quality. I mean, the cardboard is good. The wooden pieces are good. The screen printed wooden bits, I've gone over and over about how much I like that. The poker chips are good. You know, the quality is rock solid, I think. I do still think it's a bit visually a little too much for me. I mean, it is colorful, and I prefer this to, if I have a choice between this and the Sahara Desert, I'll take this every time. But this is a little, it's just tough to parse at first.
Does it feel a little juvenile to you, color-wise?
No.
I don't think color is juvenile.
No, it's just,
Okay.
it's very vibrant. It's very, they went oversaturated look. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that either, you know, that may not work for you. It's okay.
It's on the goofy side.
It's
of
on the
things,
goofy side
though.
instead of
Yeah.
like a clean, slick sci-fi side. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah, we have enough of those
none
clean,
of that.
slick.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
like, well, none of that bothers me. So, visually.
No, I think it's good. I mean, some of the pieces are a little bit small, but also that's fine. You're not
Yeah.
manipulating those terribly much. The stuff that you are manipulating regularly,
Oh, those little poker chips.
They're great.
it's-
I wish
it's
they were in every
satisfying.
game for so many things.
agree.
I love them so
They're-
much.
They're
All
really
yeah.
good. They're very satisfying.
right, Wendy, what do you give it?
All right, I'm going to give this a 7. I did enjoy it, and I thought that it was a good Euro. I think that there's a lot of great stuff going on. I like tracks. I just do. They're fun. The interconnection of the tracks, I did feel like they were a little bit tighter than I expected, and I wanted a little bit more growth in them. But I still fully recommend this game. I think that it's a good, strong, solid, thinky Euro.
I'm coming a bit higher. I'm coming with an 8 because I do think that this is kind of the modern Euro kitchen sink style. Not stink.
Kitchen
It's good.
sink.
Kitchen
Take out
sink
the-
style.
take out the
where
garbage.
There's a quote for the back of the
right,
box.
right. They're putting a lot out here, right? I mean, there's a lot going on, as you said, in this game. However, with that being said, everything felt balanced. This interconnection, I think, is sometimes it's tough to pull that off, where I felt like the way things were interacting made sense. It was good. It was satisfying. I felt like my turns were impactful. I felt like the level decision making was just right. I wasn't getting bogged in AP, but I also was having to really put some thought into my turns. And so I think it's a really solid modern Euro design. I'm giving it an 8.
I'm giving this one a 7.5. I think that it's a little bit long. Even if it doesn't necessarily feel like you're constantly bogged in AP, it does take a while to play.
Yeah.
That being said, I do recommend it because of how unique it feels. This voting thing, the columns and the rows and the 2 sides being very important mean that every decision is weighty. Things are not perfectly predictable. And I like that. I appreciate that. I really appreciate that this is doing something different, even though it's a game with tracks and a game with worker placement and all that stuff. Everything about it feels a little bit more clever than it could have been. I walked away from my first time playing it thinking, I'm not sure if I want to come back to it. And then over the next few days, kind of mulling over it, thinking, yeah, I would play that one again. And, just being more and more interested in it. So, yeah, 7.5 is where I sit.
Well, I love it. Shockingly, I give this one a 9. This is everything I want in one of these heavier Euro games. I love tracks. I'm just a sucker for tracks, but I like tracks that give you something every time you move on them. And so you mentioned that you want things to be like permanent. I don't want that actually in this particular game, because if you get this awesome thing, I like that you have it one time.
Yeah.
I don't feel like, oh, I can't catch up. In this game, I like that every time I move on a track, I got something cool. Every time. And it'd be like, ooh, and it always felt like there was a lot of good choices. At the same time, I love the interactiveness of it. I am racing for those medals everywhere.
Yeah.
I am also, you took that guy, I want it into one section. You took the tokens over here, I want it. You did the mining before I could do it, and you took my space on the board, and the voting and all that. There's just so much. It's not a multiplayer solitaire.
No.
And then, for better or for worse, I like the vibrancy of how everything looks. It's not just that it's space. I mean, I like space, but I'm tired of games that are set in a medieval land. And this just, but it also didn't feel generic space.
There's not an ounce of brown on this board.
No, there's no brown.
No.
There's a little bit of orange, which is almost brown.
But I just really, really love this. I think every game of this will feel different because of how everything's set up. And there's just a lot of fun for me in this one. Anyway, that's Federation. Again, it's probably one you have not heard of, probably. But if you like these kind of games, I think you would enjoy it. Until next time, I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Chris Yee.
I'm Wendy Yee.
I'm Mike Delisio.
Have fun in space, where no one can hear you scream.